so much politics that goes into, and I think the biggest thing is we hear that everything is fortified. Fortified with what? Like it's stripped and then it's added back in with. And so everybody thinks, oh yeah, I'm getting all my vitamins and all my nutrients because it's fortified. So you go for the fortified foods. But there's really no nutrition in there. You don't really get the macro. You're getting the snippets of vitamins and you don't know if it's the right amount. So I think that's a big part of the food politics, is the food that your soul gets fortified, but it's not really food.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Eat Real to Heal podcast. I am your host, Nicolette Richet, and on today's show, we have Moriam Okereke. She is a clinically trained doctor of pharmacist, and she's here today to share with you her amazing story of healing herself through food. Now, as you know, with many of the physicians that we have on the show, we often like to go back into their history to learn, why did they want to become a doctor? What happened while they were a medical doctor? And how did they jump and make the switch from being a trained physician who was only given about 1 to 4 hours of medical training, as you'll hear from Moriam in this show, and how they went to learn that food is medicine, how they discovered that the research was out there when it was never presented to them during med school, and then how they had the courage to switch careers. And that's exactly what Dr. Moriam did. Dr. Moriam Okereke is now an integrative nutrition health coach, mindfulness practitioner, nutrition truth seeker, and all-around wellness aficionado. Isn't that what all medical doctors really need to be? Going back to when Hippocrates first declared through the Hippocratic Oath that every single doctor graduates with, and they have to read it, put their hand on the book and literally read the oath. And it says, first, do no harm. It also said, if you can use food first before medications or surgery, just to sum it up, do that first. So where did our medical system go so wrong? But on this show today with Dr. Okereke, you are going to learn how she dove deep into the research and made the switch, and how she's helping hundreds and hundreds of people heal through natural means, through their body, through their brain, through food and their environment. And she helps people with weight loss, digestive issues, hormone imbalances, stress management, and she helps individuals regain control of their health instead of just handing it over blindly to physicians who we often put on pedestals. Now, you know me, I love physicians. When you don't know about food as medicine, you don't know of any alternative ways to heal, for sure, we need the medications, we need the surgery. But we can learn these things, and we can learn how to also do it without the medications and surgeries, especially primarily when it comes to chronic degenerative illnesses. Now, one of the things that you may or may not know is that in North America alone, we spend about $3.6 trillion. That's 90% of the $4 trillion budget that we spend on healthcare. And we spend 90% of that budget, $3.6 trillion. Let that sink in. We spend that amount of money every single year managing fully preventable and reversible chronic diseases. Now, if you are somebody who's living in poverty, if you are somebody who wants an education and you live in the United States or Canada, where it costs now like $60,000 to $120,000 to $200,000 to go to school and get a 4-year degree, that really at the end doesn't leave you making very much money. Wouldn't you rather have $3.6 trillion go into our education system or our workforce? Or what if you're in a community that doesn't even have proper roads and amenities, and even like a swimming pool, so that there's a community center and basketball courts and tennis courts? Like, we could be putting that money to so many other things. As well, you might be listening to this podcast and know that you have a son or a daughter, a mother, brother, sister, friend, a relative, or a neighbor that is suffering from a rare chronic genetic disease. And right now, we could be putting $3.6 trillion a year into rare disease research and technology. Wouldn't that be awesome? But no, we are spending $3.6 trillion a year managing preventable and fully reversible chronic diseases. 97% of all chronic diseases are reversible. That includes cancers that are reversible as well. So we have to work together to share the information that Dr. Okereke shares on this podcast, learn how she was able to get her health issues under control and how she's doing that for other people. So as a doctor of pharmacy, Miriam is also trained at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, and she really works to help people engage with their outer and inner work that's necessary to make real transformation happen. And you know that I do that work as well. So between Moriam and myself and hundreds of other people that are really boots on the ground working to help people learn about food as medicine, learn about integrative health, then you know what? We need more people like you doing it. And that brings me to share with you our newest program. So it's not our newest program. We've just opened the doors to it again. So we've already graduated 36 students through this program. We have another cohort currently in halfway through the program, but it's our nutrition and detox coaching program. And that is where we take you, someone who wants to help other people heal. You can have a science background or no science background. You can be a doctor, a naturopath, a yoga instructor, a nutritionist, a dietitian. And I promise you, you are going to learn so much information that's going to blow your mind. Because in the first half of the program, in the first 3 months, we teach you all the art and science of using food as medicine, detoxification as medicine to reverse advanced chronic diseases. So you can be out there, boots on the ground, helping other people learn this information. Now, the second half of the program is just as important, because this is where in the next 3 months, we take you through how to launch your own business. And this is in an area that you are passionate about. So it could be kids' health, prenatal health, postnatal health. It could be working with seniors with dementia. It could be working with individuals that have Crohn's disease. It could be working with people that suffer from diabetes, infertility, whatnot. It is up to you I will help you, but in the program, you're going to discover your niche area, and then you're going to either build a business from scratch in 3 months, or you're going to launch or scale your existing business. Now, I have grown many, many businesses, and I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know to successfully do that. I've had restaurants up and running in as little as 7 weeks to 3 months. And now we're 9 years into having the Green Mustache Cafe, organic cafe, cafes. And so I'm going to teach you everything you need to know, whether you want to have a consulting business, bricks and mortar business. We're going to discover that together. So head on over to the link below and join our masterclass and go to our website and sign up for a masterclass so you can learn everything you need to know about our nutrition and detox coaching certification right here, right now with Richer Health in the Green Mustache. So without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Moriam Okereke to the show. See you at the end, folks. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Eat Real to Heal podcast. I'm your host, Nicolette Richer, and on today's show, I have the wonderful Moriam Okereke. Welcome, Moriam.
Thank you, Nicole. It's great to be here.
Yeah, really lovely to have you here as well. You and I go back a long ways now, because I've been a summit guest speaker on your summit show, your Live Beyond Wellness, which is a fantastic website and an amazing product and service that you offer to your clients and the people that you coach as well into the community, bringing people together to share information about gut health, about inflammation, about chronic inflammatory conditions. So I just really appreciate the work that you do in the world.
Thank you. Thank you. I love doing that.
So let's dive in, because you are a pharmacist by trade, correct? That's what you studied? Yeah.
Yes.
And I love your story. I've heard it many times before, but I wanted to share it with the audience, because what most people don't know is that when people train to become a doctor, whether you're training to become a pharmacist or a surgeon, or you're training to become a general practitioner, you don't receive, like the published studies show that most doctors only receive about 1 to 4 hours of nutrition training in school. And was that true for you, or was that different for you?
absolutely true. I don't think I received any training on nutrition that I recall. I'm racking my brain for a course on nutrition. It was all biochemistry, science, drugs, mixing drug interactions, probably the closest drug food interactions was the closest I remember on nutrition.
Yeah, and that part I find is so interesting because I hear so many doctors tell their clients, they say, or their patients, and they say, "Oh, you know what? That illness doesn't have anything to do with your disease or your diet." I mean, so like it's not related whatsoever. But then, exactly what you said, they'll often point out, "Wow, the food is powerful enough to have an interaction with the drug that you're taking." But meanwhile, the food is not powerful enough to have an effect on your body and your disease in any way, which I just think is completely wild that that is
Yeah.
happening. And so, as a pharmacist, so you're trained, you're not really trained in nutrition. How did you end up moving into the health space and the coaching space, and you went on and studied to be an integrative nutritionist? How did you make that leap?
So when I started out as a pharmacist, I became a clinical pharmacist. So when I did finish my doctor of pharmacy, I did a residency for 1 year, which I keep forgetting to add in my bio. But so after that 1 year, then I worked in a hospital as a clinical pharmacist. And then I transitioned to work as a clinical nutrition pharmacist in the hospital, but it was really nutrition for very, very sick people where they got not necessarily like what I know now, but more like their gut was not functioning, so they had to get intravenous feeding, or they had cancer and they or some intestinal problems and they had surgery and they had to remove their gut, their intestines, and so they needed like a tube feeding. So my role there was really to ensure that they got all their electrolytes and nutrients correct, mixed in with the intravenous nutrition or with the feeding tube food that they got. So I
Okay.
did that for like 4 or 5 years, and that really got me really interested in nutrition because I worked with dietitians at that point. I worked with nurses, and I was the only pharmacist on that team, and I worked with surgeons. So it was a very interesting time.
And that is interesting in itself, in the sense that when you are, you're working on like what the solution is for the IV that's going into the patient. I mean, all of this is based on nutrients, right? At the end of the day, it's all about nutrition at the end of the day. Like if you go into the hospital and you're having a heart attack, sure, you get the drug, but often you're getting things like magnesium and potassium and iodine and all of these different nutrients. But meanwhile, they're not really teaching about nutrition in school from a food perspective, though we know things like, I know you studied the Krebs cycle, like that was a big test, right, that you had to study for in biochemistry, and you had to learn about the Krebs cycle. And the one most important part about the Krebs cycle is that A, it takes a molecule of glucose, which is a nutrient, and it also takes things like every other vitamin and amino acid, and it's taking in things like pectin, and malic acid, and so on. And these are all nutrients that are found in food. But meanwhile, there's that disconnect between foods providing nutrients, which I just think is it's just blows my mind. It's fascinating.
You're so right. We did the Krebs cycle, and I love the Krebs cycle. That was my favorite. Learning about ATP and all the different enzymes, and how they all work to get your body to get the energy and all that. But we didn't really study it as food in connection with food. It wasn't put together like that.
And do you see anything ever changing in the future of our medical schools where more nutrition is going to be brought in, or what are you seeing in that field? Are you even looking at that anymore now that you're in the world of nutrition?
I am hearing that there is more programs, but it's still not enough. They're doing a little bit of talking about nutrition and food in medical schools, but not as much. Like really just snippets. Like you know, after out of 4 years of medical training, those that MDs like they probably do like who knows maybe like a few hours.
Yeah, it's still definitely not
Not
enough.
enough. Not enough.
Exactly. And so tell me about what nutrition school was like for you, having gone through and taken extensive biochemistry and chemistry and biology classes. So you had all your medical school sciences down. You had studied all the drug interactions and how medicines are used. Like a lot of it's about diagnosing and prescribing. So what was that like for you to go study at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition as a medical doctor?
Well, it was very different. It was totally different. What we focused on, and I think what I learned is just the different dietary theories, like how there's so many different ways of eating and food and what nourishes your body. I think what I learned then was the common theme that you get to really focus on whole foods versus I want to say whole foods versus processed refined food, because we basically studied over 100 dietary theories then in Institute of Integrative Nutrition. But the focus was on, with everything that we studied, like they kept it neutral, like we're not saying this is good or this is bad, but what we're saying is processed refined food doesn't serve you. Sugar doesn't serve you. Most often, dairy doesn't serve you. Things like that. So that's what I learned, and I also learned about the food politics. It's a big one.
Yeah, the food politics is a massive piece that can you just explain a little bit more about the food politics for people? Because I think a lot of folks that are listening to this show might not understand the whole political realm that surrounds every single food choice that you're making every day.
Right, and we had different faculty members really talk about like the meat industry, like who the lobbying that goes into that, and how what is served in schools versus what really benefits the children. It's not so much about the nourishment versus how to make this a business. That's what I like. It's really more about the business and the politics about that. The dairy industry was there, like pushing for that. There's a lot of lobbying and just so much going on, but not really looking at what really serves the individual, what nourishes your body, what is good for you. And so it was more about how do we get this out to the masses so that they buy it and they purchase it and they eat it and make it sound good and nourishing for you. I mean, I see all the information about dairy, information about meat and sugared foods, our cereal. I mean, there's just so much politics that goes into. And I think the biggest thing is we hear that everything is fortified.
Hmm.
Fortified with what? Like it's stripped and then it's added back in with. And so everybody thinks, oh yeah, I'm getting all my vitamins and all my nutrients because it's fortified. So you go for the fortified foods. But there's really no nutrition in there. You don't really get the macro. You're getting the snippets of vitamins and you don't know if it's the right amount. So I think that's a big part of the food politics is the food that you're sold gets fortified, but it's not really food.
Yeah, and I mean, they say it right on the box as well. They're often saying, this food is not a significant source of vitamin A, vitamin E, like it really
Mm-hmm.
says it right on there. And that's the other part too that I find interesting is this disconnect within the medical community between what constitutes supplements and whether people should be taking supplements or not, because a lot of physicians I hear say, oh, and you see this all over the media, like, don't take supplements are bad for you. Meanwhile, we have this multi-billion-dollar supplement industry, but also the manufactured food processes are just simply fortifying all of this refined processed food with supplements. So regardless, people are taking supplements every single day unknowingly every single time they purchase processed foods, but it's only like what, three or four or five different things versus 125 different things that we need in the whole
You're right.
form.
I totally agree, and I see that. And even the supplements are like not the right amount, right? Like you say, it doesn't contain a significant amount of vitamin A or vitamin D, but people are not taught to read labels. Once they hear fortified, you see that on the label, that's good enough. rarely do people go and read the labels and say, "Oh wow, 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 this is in here," or your first ingredient, sugar. And most people don't even realize that. Well, that means it's mostly sugar versus really what you're supposed to be getting.
Yeah, no, exactly. Um, yeah, there's such a disconnect between the knowledge that's taught, not just in med school, but schools all over, even like elementary school students, high school students, everything. How hard was that? So, are you still a practicing pharmacist right now?
No, but I'm licensed, so I could practice. So I keep my license active.
Oh, you do. Okay.
Yeah.
And were you still practicing at the time when you were studying nutrition?
I wasn't practicing as a pharmacist, but I was working for pharmaceutical company.
Okay.
Something disconnect. but I worked in the research end of it, like in oncology and mostly with I'm sorry, with I lost my thought now. I worked with um I'll come back to that. I worked in early phase oncology. So that's basically where I worked, and we looked at really immunology drugs versus like the chemically made drugs. So it's a little bit different, but that's and I was beginning to hear little things about actually one time at work I actually found where there was some information talking about um, nutrition and how it connects to cancer. I'm like, whoa, somebody is picking up something. I was very like excited when I saw that. It wasn't really part of what I was doing, but I saw an article on that. I was very excited to see that there's some recognition, but how it's connecting, I don't know because it's not a big part of it.
Yeah, and that is such a shame, especially because I mean, now I'm sure since you've studied nutrition, you see, and is being somebody who also values research as well. We see that there's so much research out there that shows the importance of nutrition on our health, and we see it. But what I see most people looking for when they're studying is they want to see things like, well, is a plant-based whole food diet, does that fight cancer? But you're not going to see a lot of studies on that. But what you will see is that we have to break down the research to show that, for example, beta carotene or resveratrol, or like everything gets broken down to its minute molecules, as opposed to like we need way more studies that are conducted showing, for example, that a diet rich in whole foods is obviously going to be better than a diet rich in refined processed foods. But that research has been there. I hear other doctors that are in the same position as you, where they went to medical school and then they graduate, they practice, and then they learn about nutrition later. And they're like, what? This research was there all along. And why was it not presented to us in medical school?
Right, right. You're
And
right, right.
And so for yourself then, now that you're coaching clients right now and you teach the whole summit. So what are some of because you're in the United States, what are some of the things that you are helping your clients with predominantly? Like, is there a common theme that affects your clients?
A lot of my clients have I'm going to be broad and say chronic inflammation. And a lot of times they have, they complain of joint, headaches, fatigue, things like that. And when I support them and I work with them and introduce a different way of eating, they see the difference. They're like, oh my gosh, I actually feel better. But when I go back and eat this food, especially with sugar, I feel it right away. So I really work with my clients. What I do is I actually do like a pantry makeover with them, so we get to read the labels when you go with what's in your cabinet, what's in your refrigerator, what do you have, and read the labels. And they're so surprised to see what they have in their kitchen.
Yeah,
So that's a big part of what I do. And then I also do like cooking classes with my clients.
Yeah, that's really important. I know the value of cooking classes so much because of the fact that I got to grow up with a mother who cooked real whole foods all the time. So we always had, real raw ingredients in the house. So I knew how to peel things, I knew how to chop things, I knew how to, but I mean, we get clients that come to our wellness center that have never ever held a potato in their hands or an onion or a leek. And so what is that like for you when you go in, and like how are you teaching these cooking classes? And how were they received by some of these clients that you're working with?
It is interactive, and because of course we're doing Zoom cooking classes, so I send a list. We pick a food that we're going to be making. If it's roasted vegetables, if it's baked potato, if it's let me give like an eggplant, some kind of whole foods lasagna, something like that, and I get them um, the ingredients and the recipe and teach them what to do and tell them what to prep so that it takes less time. And we cook together on Zoom. We cook, we cut up, like you say, chop up all the onions and peppers and, and tomatoes and carrots and mushrooms, and we make it together, tell them the temperature, and they make like this big batch, and we also batch cook. And when they get it, they're like, oh my gosh, even my husband that doesn't like, thinks it's too healthy, they love it. Because their significant other may be skeptical, like, what is this? And it's like they loved it. They've been eating that food we made together. So we work together, we bake, they bake on their side, cook on their side, and I cook on my side the same food.
That's
And then
amazing.
take pictures, and then we kind of eat together.
That is really amazing. I love that you're doing that and that you managed to, like, do you still continue to do that then, obviously through COVID when the world shut down and people were at home more? Yeah, no, that is an incredible service to offer people. And, for anybody who's listening right now, like if you don't know how to chop real vegetables and how to assemble them together, then I mean, definitely you need to sign up for one of Moriam's cooking classes. Now, there's the other side of cooking, though, right? Because a lot of people in restaurants do this all the time. Even nutritionists do this all the time. They'll take the really good ingredients and then they turn them into unhealthy ingredients by adding all of the extra sauces and the sugars and the salts and the oils. So, how do you teach your clients about that? Like, how are you teaching them to cook so that the food still remains healthy?
Well, we do bake, and I like warm food, so I teach them to make a lot of stuff in the oven, so it's not like fried,
Hmm.
like frying the food. So we chop it up and we bake, or we roast vegetables, or we um, roast onions. I mean, yeah, onions. I like the onions sauteed or roasted, but we
Hmm.
don't add sugar. I add single spices, like if you're adding peppers, like it's I teach my clients not to get like, like you get like a spice that has like 10 things and you don't know what's in it because it's them. So it's like if you're adding onion powder, okay, it's onion powder. If you're adding black pepper, it's black pepper alone. If you're adding thyme or curry, things like that, you add it single ingredients to the way you like it. And then we make, so it gets very tasty. If you're making rice, black rice is all I cook with my clients. I like black rice and I do quinoa because
Nice.
I believe black rice is very nutrient dense. It's not common to find. And I had a client who had never heard of black rice before. And I did quinoa and potatoes, potatoes and baked plantain. So I do a lot of baking with the food versus frying.
Amazing. Amazing. Which is the way most people all around the world used to cook because they didn't have access to all of these oils. There was, oils are a new invention in human history if you think about the spectrum of, human existence. And we didn't have oils. It takes a lot of energy to create and extract oils out of, whether it's almonds or avocados or canola or corn or whatever it is. And so people didn't have frying. That is a new invention, relatively speaking. And so baking was the way it was done in so many cultures. And I mean, you were born in the United Kingdom in London, and then you moved to Nigeria. So I'm curious with a lot of the cooking that you do, like are you influenced by having been raised in Nigeria from when you were quite young, or where's your influence for cooking? Where does that come from?
Yeah, I would say Nigeria. I like spicy food. So we put peppers and onions, peppers, onions, tomato. I like to add all that, and then the green vegetables. Like we make we call it soup, but here they call it stew, where we put all these green vegetables, um, spinach, kale, onions, pepper, mushrooms. I mean, when I was growing up, it used to be meat, but I'm plant based, so and we add all that, and when they have that, they were like, oh, I call it a stew. It's like red because I do a lot of bell peppers. So what I do is I roast it and I blend it.
Mm.
And when it's roasted, I believe it brings out the flavor. And I roast the garlic too. And but I do drizzle just a little bit of oil just to keep it not too dry. And then they blend it and then they cook it down, or I just saute it in a pan. But it becomes very tasty, and they can use that. I said you can use that for salad instead of your sugary salad dressing. We don't add sugars. We add a little bit of um, Himalayan pink salt, but we don't add sugar. We don't add any. I really believe in single ingredients. Just get them and put them together, and then you make a nice dish.
Yeah.
Versus something that's already been made in the store, because you don't know what's in it. You don't know what seasonings in it. A lot of stuff has MSG and sugar. First, I mean, you'd be surprised how many tomato sauces have sugar.
Oh, it's almost, I think that sugar doesn't even have to be labeled. Half the amount of the sugar that's actually included in food doesn't even have to be labeled according to the labeling laws. But yeah, sugar, at the end of the day, most people are eating wheat,
Yes,
sugar,
yes.
corn, salt, and yeast. Like basically, those are the food groups that most people are consuming. Most people are not consuming real whole foods, like you're talking about, like red peppers and potatoes and all of that. But that again comes back to this simple way of cooking, because everybody thinks it's really, like, so many people think it's so complicated to eat healthy, right? They think it's so hard to eat healthy. And I get that from the standpoint of that you do have to put some forethought into it, right? You need to think about what you want to cook tomorrow. Plus, you need to, wash the vegetables and chop the vegetables, and then you have to wait for them to bake in the oven. But like you said, you could do batch cooking, which means you get all of your cooking done for like 4 days, maybe even 5 days. Food does last for 5 days well in the fridge, and you can get all your cooking done. And then what you're getting out of it is real whole food cooking, right?
I
And
love batch cooking. That's my favorite.
yeah, and we have to do it in this world where we're so busy and we don't have a mom who stays in the kitchen anymore, and like in Nigeria or Malawi, where I'm from, food is the number one thing that's thought about every single day. It's about growing your food, going to the market and getting the food, and then cooking the food for the whole family. But here, food is kind of like an afterthought, like, I'm hungry. Let's just go to the drive-through and get something. And there's not a lot of that planning, but there is that planning that does need to come into it if people want to be healthy and to be able to heal themselves from chronic disease. And I'm glad that you're teaching them how to do that and to
You
do it
said it
efficiently.
right. Yeah, you said it right. And then, like in Nigeria too, it's made every day, like, every day fresh. Somebody's always in the kitchen cooking. Somebody's always in the kitchen. That's it. That's what they do. They go to the market. It's like, even for dinner, they get to go to the market to buy the ingredients for dinner. Everything is fresh. And also, I think it comes from where I grew up. Like, we didn't have like the electricity, and everything was different. So you couldn't really have frozen like food in the fridge for that long. So you get to make it fresher. It's better when it's fresh. And maybe it lasts a day or two. Some people like it's every day. Sometimes it's 2 days. But because power could go out anytime, and you don't want like a whole bunch of food sitting that would go bad.
Yeah.
But here we have that. And I also like to make smoothies, teach my client how to make smoothies. Like either the green smoothies or the smoothies with superfoods and with, fruits, just for if you're busy. I like that because it has a lot of fortified. Now I don't use that word fortified.
I know it, condensed nutrients.
It's very nutrient dense with the
Yeah.
greens. I love the green smoothies, and I love the other superfood smoothies that they add a lot of additional. I like some superfoods like your beets. I like the plain, just organic beet powder, and I like to add things like maca or moringa, certain nutrient dense food that you need for certain stages in your life. I like to add that into smoothies and then use that and just make a batch because when I talk about smoothies, people are like, I don't have time. I don't have time to make smoothie every day. I'm too busy. Like you could actually freeze some. I said Dr. Farmanta, but you could freeze it and it's still fine.
Yeah.
So long as you made it fresh. As a pharmacist, what I learned is food goes bad if you're not, I use the word aseptic about how you prepare it and how you store it. Because you could literally store food in the fridge for 2 weeks, literally, Nicolette, and it will be fine, depending on how you serve it. You don't put your spoon in your mouth and then put it in your soup and then expect it to last for 2 weeks or even 4 days because you already introduced bacteria. As I said, just use a fresh, clean spoon. When you serve it, don't eat out of your big batch and then come back and save it. If you scoop it into a small container, warm it up, and keep it, it actually lasts for up to 10 days in the fridge if you preserve it right. I mean, I'm using the wrong word again. If you save it without putting introducing bacteria into it. Every time you scoop something, it's a clean spoon. And every time you taste from your food, you don't put it back into your big batch. And actually, I learned that years ago with my kids because when they were younger, and I was a working mom, I got to make sure the food lasts a little longer than 2 days. And I was very strict about no, don't put your spoon in the big pot. That's not allowed. You
Yeah.
know.
And that's what I mean. We see this, we get this habit from watching chefs on television that like are constantly, or like whoever, seeing moms in the kitchen, dads in the kitchen, and they're always like tasting the food and then like is putting it back in. And it's true, like we have our restaurants and technically our food is good for 10 days, but the Coastal Health Authority, they come in and they'll sample our food often, and they want us to take it back to the lab, and they want to see like at day 3, at day 5, at day 10, like how much bacteria is growing in that food. And definitely like that, we definitely could easily get 10 days, but I mean, we're turning over our food every single day. So everybody's getting like super, super fresh food. But yeah, no, it's true what you're saying. Like we can just be mindful in the kitchen. And then if for somebody who's really, really tight on time, then they can do their batch cooking for many more days. And which it's way better to do that and to eat the food that you cooked instead of going out and buying store-bought food
Yeah,
all
that's
the
what I
time.
like to say because some people's like, oh, banana is very high in calories. I'm like, I'd rather you have bananas than bread
Yes.
any day. I don't, it doesn't matter. I said bananas, bread. There's no choice. Go for your banana and leave the bread. Is they go for that cereal because it's low calorie. So I believe not every calorie is this. It's not about calories. It's about the quality of your food. And people focus on, oh, it's low fat this, low fat that, and then you lose all that good nourishment.
Yeah, because nature has made our food so that it has the perfect amount of fat, the perfect amount of salt, the perfect amount of sugar, the perfect amount of nutrients, macro and micro. But meanwhile, as a society, like we're constantly manipulating food to be high fat, low fat, keto, and we don't need to do that. We just need to go to the produce section and buy up all those plant-based foods and go to the whole grain section and the beans and legume section and just eat those. Like nature's made it perfect for us. And I mean, most people in Nigeria, most people in Malawi, people who've lived there, the majority of people don't have access to fridges. They don't have access to electricity. They're cooking on an open stove. If you're outside of the cities, and this is like millions of people in these countries, and they've never had access to any single food that has a label on it. Like the food literally comes from the earth and goes into their mouth, like after they cook it. And so, yeah, we're funny human beings here. So let's go. I want to jump into you had struggled with joint pain and digestive issues for years. So, what was like, I'm sure you've reflected on this, but at the time when you were struggling with this before you understood about nutrition, like what were you thinking was the cause of your joint pain and digestive issues?
Oh, that's very clear. Processed refined food. I used to put I thought then working as a nutrition pharmacist that I knew enough about what was healthy. It's like I was into the low fat, low fat white whole wheat bread, which is all gluten. Low fat, put some what's that ah, those sweeteners, the low calorie sweeteners, the blue.
Oh, equal and aspartame and
Equal actually was a big trigger for migraine headaches for me. I had migraine headaches. I had headaches for so long. I did not realize it was putting equal and drinking the Starbucks coffee, which even though it was decaf, but still with all that syrup. Once I stopped it, my migraines, my headaches went away. No more headaches.
yeah.
Sneaker bars, all that stuff. I thought I was eating healthy, but I knew definitely. Actually, I'm going to add that um, eating animal protein was a big trigger for me. As soon as I went plant based, I would wake up in the morning with my knees locked up. Like literally, I was kind of trying to release it, like I was 90 years old. I slowly have to I couldn't bend my knees at night because then it would lock up with pain, and I knew that came from as soon as I cut it off, and I as a pharmacist, we do something called a re-challenge. If you're not going to die from it, you could try a re-challenge. So I re-challenged my body. I was like, okay, let me just even eat sauce made from lamb sauce and goat sauce. And as soon as I ate it, two things happened. Heartburn, my throat was burning within 15 minutes. And the second thing that happened was when I would wake up in the morning, I'd be like, oh, my joint pain is back again. It's so painful. And I realized, well, that's because you're eating a sauce that was made with broth from lamb and beef. As soon as I stopped it, it went away. And even if I drink too much red wine definitely triggered all that. So I knew what the triggers were. And sugar was a big one for the headaches and just feeling fatigue. And so it was the food I was eating. As soon as I cut out processed refined food and went plant based, it's a big shift. It's a big shift.
Yeah, and it happens so fast that once you cut out the refined processed food, like people are so shocked to see their arthritis like completely just disappear. They're like, what? Like you say, like waking up and almost taking half the day to the joints to unwind, and then going to bed at night feeling pretty good. You've had a glass of wine, like you're like not thinking about your pain anymore, and then again it starts all over again the next morning. Your whole body's so stiff, and then people are so surprised that the minute that they cut out those things, all of a sudden like they have full mobility back. They don't have the debilitating painful migraines. The gut health issues just go away. Like it happens so fast. But one of the things that you mentioned is the sugar, and I just want to clarify this because I know our audience who hears this, they're like, sugar's bad, so I shouldn't eat potatoes, I shouldn't eat carrots, I shouldn't eat apples, I shouldn't eat watermelon, because all of these foods do technically contain sugar. So I see this all the time, is where people are staying away from healthy whole foods because they're high in sugar, and that usually includes most of the fruits. But then again, like they're going for the aspartame. And so I just wanted you to comment on that as a pharmacist, as a nutritionist, to really help our audience understand the difference between sugar and sugar.
Okay, thank you. Not all sugars are the same. The refined sugars, they spike your blood glucose so fast because there's no fiber in that. It's just that sugar. People say, oh, sugar cane. It's not sugar. They take all their sugar cane and they strip it, they refine it, and it's like, boom, it gets into your body and it gets absorbed really fast. And your glucose goes high, insulin comes in to try to fight that. So it really spikes. There's zero fiber in all those refined sugars, for one. So your body doesn't really absorb it slowly like it should, like the sugar from banana or the sugar from mango. It has the fiber. Of course, when you spend a lot of time drinking fruit juices, that's also very high in sugar. So you want to minimally, because that's stripped of all the fiber when you do just juicing. But when you eat your fruit, and I will usually say to my clients, how many times do you sit and eat 10 apples? nobody eats usually tea, but you could have 2 glasses of apple juice, probably has 10 apples in it. So think about all that sugar you're taking, but you're also being stripped of the fiber. So you don't have that fiber that will work, into your gut and really help with digestion and absorption. So that's the difference. Also, those things have been stripped of all nutrients. It's just pure sugar. It's no
And
nutrient.
and that's another good point that you brought up too about fiber, because there's many different types of fiber, like all our fruits and vegetables and whole grains, they have, different types of fiber that your body needs for different types of things. But meat has zero fiber. Eggs have zero fiber. So, right now we're in a world where everybody thinks that they're going to be protein deficient if they eat a plant-based diet, right? We'll get into the protein talk, but more than anything, like even when you were sick and struggling with your joint pain and your digestive issues, it was also probably the result of not having enough whole fibers in your body
Hmm.
from the food
Absolutely.
as well. Yeah, and this is something, so I'm just curious now. So when you're working with your clients and your clients, you teach them how to cook, they learn new recipes, they make the food with you, you cook together, you eat together. How likely are they to stay with your program, to stay with eating clean, real food? I'm just really curious about that because we know how addictive so much of this processed refined food is. What are
I
you seeing
give
with
this,
your clients?
I, the clients that really, you know, one as a client, you have to want to do it. So when my clients are ready and they're really following what I'm telling them, I say it's like you've been living your life and there's been a horse stepping on your foot for years, but that's part of your life. So you think it's natural for to feel that foot pain. And then the horse is, steps up your foot, they step up your foot, and then you feel great. And then one day you feel that horse step on your foot. That pain is so intense. It's like when you feel that pain again that you had from what you were doing, it's a trigger for them to stop. Because I've had a clients like really when I tried one day, I went out, they had like cake and something, and I tried it. The sugar, it was just I felt so bad. My back pain came back, my joint. I just like knew I couldn't do that anymore. I think your body tells you that that intense pain when it comes back the second time, you feel it like it's not insidious as it used to be. It's like boom, like headache. You're like, why do I have this headache? Well, what did you eat? So I asked them to keep a food mood diary to see what they've eaten, and I said it's not usually from what you eat at today. Sometimes you could go back to a week. So when you go back and do that history, think about what did you eat 3 days ago? What did you eat 4 or 5 days ago? What's the trigger? I do that a lot with my sister because she will come back and she gets migraine. I was like, what did you eat? Oh no, no, nothing, nothing, nothing. It's like think. Oh yeah, I had that sauce. I had this. I said, yeah, that's your trigger. That's why you're having this headache now. And, you can't go to work right now because you have a bad migraine. But it usually comes back to food. My sister called me the other day. Her joint is so bad. I said, it goes back to food. What did you do? Oh, I was celebrating Eid and I had a lot of wine. So I know. I was like, I'm glad you know. You know what your triggers are. I think it's just really knowing how painful it is,
Yeah.
especially when you're feeling so good and you want to like be able to do work out and walk without pain and not wake up with this reflux pain in your throat because that can be quite intense. You feel like somebody's just slicing your throat. I know. And so people, once they follow that routine and been doing it at least 3 to 6 months, they usually don't want to go back.
Yeah.
So they need about 3 to 6 months to see that effect and not go back.
Yeah, I see the same thing with my clients as well, that when they turn to food as medicine, when they start reversing their chronic illnesses, just simply by eliminating the processed refined food, by adding a few additional nutrients in, all of a sudden, in the beginning, there's always the falling off the wagon, because food is a real addiction, right? Like refined processed food with the high amounts of salt and sugar and oils, it's very addictive to the brain. And so they fall off the wagon and then they have that exact experience like your sister's having, but which I think is important to have because it's about building that awareness and seeing the power of food to affect your body. It is so powerful. It has the ability to heal you, but it has the ability to harm you, like to become that horse that's stepping on your foot. And I think it's so important for kids to experience this because so many kids nowadays, and I'm sure you'll agree, they have grown up only eating processed refined foods. So for
Yes.
them, they, and a lot of these kids are suffering from the mental health conditions that are associated with the gut conditions, the inflammatory, chronic conditions, chronic inflammatory conditions. And so they don't know any other way. Like people are living with perpetual brain fog, and they just think that this is what it's like to live.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
so right. That is the truth. It is the self-awareness.
Yeah, no, it's
Give
really
them
important. And
yeah.
so with your clients then, like how long does it take to help somebody transition? Like I know you say that they're going to stick to it for 3 to 6 months and then they become like lifers, right? Where they're just going to do this for the rest of their life. But how long does it take for you to work with somebody so that they develop the skills to be able to basically live like a plant strong life?
Like I said, I usually have a 6-month program.
Oh, you have 6 months. Oh,
5.
great.
Yeah, I usually have, and sometimes I do 3 if they like. But I have a 6-month program, so I coach them for 6 months, and we do a cooking class every month. So the 6
Amazing.
cooking classes they get, and another big thing I have found that supports my client is reading labels because you can't even when they think, oh, this is healthy. I'm like, did you read the label? And my sister, she's a big example. She goes, I read the labels now, and I'm like, if it's more than 5 ingredients, if I can't pronounce it, I said, if you can't even read it, like you pull up the label and just like, well, I need my glasses closer, then put it down. Don't even bother. Don't even
Yeah.
bother. And so reading labels is so important because sometimes it says natural, and same food industry, they sell you with natural, all natural ingredients, healthy, and then you think, okay, I can throw that into my grocery shopping cart. And then you read the ingredients. The first thing there is sugar or MSG. The other day, my sister, she thought she was eating healthy, which, no, not a sister. And I went to visit her. She had, she had a pack of like some dried salmon something. And they're like, I guess you figure, okay, salmon has good fatty acids, maybe salmon chips. I look at it, I said, this is MSG is your first ingredient. Can you just throw that away, right now? Because already there's nothing healthy about it. Whether you think salmon is good for you or not, just you get to toss it out. You
Yeah.
know, that's how that's part of the marketing because they make all these refined foods from using one small ingredient of something that's supposed to be good for you, even like plantain chips or um, dried bananas, which are dried with sugar. You see dried fruits is another big one that's very high in sugar because of the way it's done. And you see cranberries. I say to my
Mm,
family, don't go near cranberries. They are all sugars added to every dried cranberry.
yeah.
So if you get your fresh cranberries, that's fine, but don't go near dried cranberries. Anything cranberry loaded with sugar that's dried. So it's reading labels, really. That's a big part of staying consistent and also remembering to get within the produce aisle. Because I say to them, do you see rice, white rice in the produce aisle? I say, but you see potato, you see plantain,
Yeah.
you know. So if you're looking for the carbs, you can get your potato and your plantain and your banana, but you don't see rice, white rice in the produce aisle because it's out there with the refined food.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's a thing too, is that there's so much marketing that is done to make you think that you're getting the whole food. Like, people I see now too, like bags of apples. So the only ingredient is the whole apple. Like it's literally like you get 10 apples in the bag and it's
Mm-hmm.
marketed as being vegan and gluten free. Like I'm seeing this savvy marketing. So people go in. So at least if they're holding up the bag of apples, great. They are getting that. But then it's training them to look for gluten-free vegan products. So then they go to the middle aisles and they think anything that has the word organic, gluten-free, and vegan is good. But then most of the ingredients that are in those foods in the processed package, vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free, organic, food is literally, it starts with, like you said, MSG, cane sugar, um, processed refined flours, like there's no whole foods in all of those. And so that's the part. So that's why I asked you, like, how hard is it when you're working with clients to help, because you're breaking basically their entire knowledge system around food. And
Right,
that's
right.
huge.
So besides the cooking class and the pantry makeover, we do a grocery store tour. So we
Oh,
go
good.
like I if I'm not there in person, I go with Zoom. I like, yeah, I'm gonna be with you. I meet them up in the store. Let's before you put it in your shopping cart, let's read the ingredients and shop in the produce aisle first. And they're like, oh my gosh, I used to buy this. I didn't know it had so much sugar. I'm like, yeah. And like it's just an apple was always gluten free. So that's the marketing ploy. Like they put gluten free and vegan. It's always been vegan and gluten free because it's
Yeah.
an apple.
Yeah.
So you're right. And then they go to that aisle that's gluten free and they get sucked into all those, macaroni and cheese that's gluten free. It's all refined and processed.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's still so. I think reading labels is a big part of where I teach them to find this hidden marketing ploys that can really get you back into eating the wrong food because you think you're eating healthy once you hear vegan and gluten free.
Yeah, yeah, and the billions of dollars that are spent by marketers of food products. I mean, that's all they're trying to do is try and figure out a way that you're going to go walk down that aisle and put that product into your grocery store cart. But you don't see, on television, it's really easy to see where all the money is spent. Like, and in the United States, it's even like the marketing that's on television is, 10 times worse than it is in Canada. And it's already bad in Canada. But there's all the marketing for all the pharmaceutical drugs. Then there's all the marketing for the fast food companies, like the burgers and the fries. And you'll often see like a pharmaceutical drug ad followed by like a fast food burgers, fries, fruit beer, or whatever, Coca-Cola commercial. And that's all you see being played off on television. So you're being told, take the drug, but also eat this horrific food, right? It's absolutely crazy. And people need to start understanding that, through taking programs like yours, Moriam, and taking programs like ours, that they are able to actually take back their power.
That is true. That is true. I mean, I have so many stories with my family. I have one family member who A1C was high, and the first thing the doctor said was, "We're going to start you on, anti-diabetic," like no question. And the thing is, six weeks before it was normal. So why don't you ask what happened in the last 6 weeks? So I said to her, "What happened?" She goes, "I know what happened. I was eating a lot of junk food. I was drinking a lot of alcohol. I was doing donuts." She said, "Because it was normal, like really normal." And instead of him to, the doctors to say, I don't know who the doctor was, like, let's figure out, go back and change what you're eating and let's check it again and see. It was like, well, I'm calling the prescription. It was expensive. I think when it was so expensive, she called me. I was like, yeah, you got to work with foods.
Yeah.
Let's cut out all that stuff you've been eating. And I bet you in 6 weeks, you go back, it's going to be okay. Instead of spending $1,000 for this prescription that it's going to have more issues down the road. And then when that happens, you get more. So I'm glad she called me, but that just kind of, it's sad that something like that could even give them a chance to reverse it by going, say, come back in 60 days and I'll recheck it. This is what you get to do,
Yeah.
and go, change what you're eating. Let's set you up with a nutritionist or, talk to somebody. It didn't happen. It was like you say, just that is easy. And most people will go through that because it's easy. You don't have to change anything. Just
Yeah.
put it, take that pill and continue what you're doing. But the end effect is it progresses into something bigger. Because we know what diabetes can do. It can lead to a lot of other issues like, the kidney disease, the heart disease, the, neuropathy, all sorts of things happens to you eventually. Cardiovascular, it's a big one.
Yeah, and you being a pharmacist, you probably saw that a lot, right? So that you're sitting there, the patient receives the prescription and the patient believes that it's going to make them better, but what they don't realize is no, like this is not reversing your condition. This is just stopping the symptoms from being so aggressive. And every year, every decade, it's going to get worse. You're going to need more drugs, and eventually you're still going to end up with it's just basically delaying the inevitable. that disease will most likely still get the best of you. And especially when it comes to diabetes, like we're talking about death, amputation, blindness. And for a lot of people, it's disability for many years while they're on these prescription medications. And I don't know how you feel about it. I mean, being a pharmacist, I love prescription medications for when somebody has no knowledge that food has the ability to reverse your disease. If that person has no other way, they don't know how to, arrest their disease, the medication is necessary.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that it has to be for life that you take that medication.
That's what I say. I said, I'm not telling you to stop your medication. I'm saying, start this option. The next time you see your doctor, they might say, like, oh, you look great. You don't need this medicine anymore. Mm-hmm. But the first thing is, this is convenient. And we're going to, I said, just try this, add this into what you're doing and see what happens. Because yes, you're right. And what I just love to see when I see the studies that show now, I mean, clear association, like connection with colon cancer and prostate cancer with meat. I mean, that mainstream medicine is saying that connection is good. Well, I mean, we see studies, but the education isn't there. Yeah. And that's what's sad. Like, they're not telling the patients, hey, you could do better if you go plant-based. This is what's probably a trigger. You've been eating this like this all these years, and now you have maybe stage 1 cancer. You could actually do something about it. Why don't we change what you're eating? Even if they opt for therapy or whatever they're doing, but change what you're eating. But you hear things like, go home and eat what you want. And that's sad. Yeah. To be told to go home and eat whatever you want so you can put on weight.
Oh, yeah. Or, you need to eat more protein, or you need to stop eating the carbohydrates because those are too high in sugar. So stay away from, the squashes and bananas and potatoes and, black rice is considered a carbohydrate, so stay away from all of these beautiful whole grains and don't eat. And so people are being told to stay away from these really amazing nutrient dense foods. And again, which to me is just so crazy when we have the knowledge about how food is medicine. We have the knowledge that our body craves these nutrients. Our brain needs carbohydrates. It needs sugar to be effective. But meanwhile, people are being told to not eat fruits anymore, and people are told not to eat these beautiful foods. And so one of the pieces that you were talking about a lot, just now, was your family, right? So I want to know, what was this like for you being a pharmacist? So you're actually trained in biochemistry, in chemistry, in biology, and as a pharmacist. And then you started studying nutrition. Like, did your family just jump on board with everything, or were they like most people who kind of have to wait till they hit rock bottom before they make the change?
They definitely waited till they hit rock bottom. They were resistant to that. And then when they see, when one family member comes on board and they see the changes in that person, then they start thinking, I'm ready to do this. Now they actually have to hit rock bottom, like really some really debilitating disease or some life-threatening, something that's really, yeah. Because when I even get teased about it, like, oh, you don't eat anything, you're not enjoying life. I'm like, I am enjoying life. I love what I eat.
Yeah. And you're not waking up with these stiff joints anymore, right? And these digestive issues anymore, and these migraines anymore. And there's this association between food being pleasurable and food being joy and food being celebration. But then you also have to hold that in the context of, well, if you can't go to work, you can't play, you can't have fun because you're in chronic pain all the time, then is food really that, should it be really enjoyable? And it can be when you're eating this way. Like, once you learn how to cook, the food is so tasty, right? Like, I haven't tasted your cooking yet, but just the way you described it, I'm like, I want to eat your cooking. Yeah, and it is so enjoyable. And so you can have your cake and eat it too, so to speak. You can have your beautiful plant-based food and it can be delicious. And you can have your health at the same time.
Right.
Without having to hit rock bottom. So what was it like for you being a pharmacist and studying this? What about your peers, your professional peers? What did they think about you when you started studying this? What was the response you're
Because for a
getting?
long time I worked in pharma. And actually, here's the funny part, a lot of my peers were interested in getting tips and advice from me about health. It's like, oh, that's a part I really want to know about. What should I do about this? So I even when I was working, my manager would ask me a lot of questions about, you know, and got her to eliminate dairy and do more plant-based and nuts and stuff like that. So I actually get people curious and want to know because they feel the pain in their body.
Yeah.
And when it comes to that, they're like, I want to do better with that. Yeah, but not being totally on board, but just want to. But that's a step because I didn't get like, how could you talk about that? I did it. It was encouraged. They wanted actually to know about it and what to do. They wanted advice, so which is good. And
That is amazing. Yeah.
yeah,
And some of the physicians that I train on this, when they're learning it for the first time and then they go out and talk about it with their peers, usually what they get back is like, you've gone off the deep end, buddy. Like, what? You can't just live on plants. You're not getting, and even the doctors will say, like, you're not getting enough protein that way. And you need to, like whatever the idea that they have in their head. So for some of the physicians that I teach, it is hard for them to come out, so to speak, as
right.
a plant-based eater and a plant-based nutritionist. And a lot of them too also say where they get stuck, especially the physicians, the naturopaths who are learning about this for the first time. They're like, well, I'm not allowed to teach this because it's not scientifically proven. And so I
Mm.
still see that. So I was curious for you what that was like with your peers, because I do see that happen with a lot of physicians.
One thing I do, I like to pull up references. So that's where I get like before I recommend anything, I go and I pull out references. This is what this shows. This is the benefits of this food. So that supports because if I yeah, and so just using references with some people that are skeptic that supports them. But I know I have physicians in the family that are like, I would rather die than live like that. I'd
Yeah.
rather just die than not eat meat, not eat this. It's like, but when the pain really gets there, it's not funny. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's skeptics. You see that with traditional medicine, you see a lot more skeptic. But my other scientists, some of them are like, yeah, I want to know more about this. And then I provide references and links to, and I send them to websites of physicians that are doing it. It's like, well, this person is an MD too, so they're doing this. So
Yeah.
obviously they went to medical school just like you, and they're doing this. This is what's happening.
Yeah, and that is and that even still with the amount of physicians, especially there's way more physicians in the United States that are plant-based physicians that are
Mm-hmm.
teaching people how to reverse heart disease and diabetes, and like Dr. Dean Ornish and Dr. Neil Bernard and Dr. T. Colin Campbell and Dr. Joel Furman, like all of
Yes.
that, Mark Heyman, like they're all out there teaching this. And even still though, it feels like we're a million miles away from where we need to be. So I'm curious for you, what is your vision for our future based on all the knowledge you've accumulated as a pharmacist, as somebody with a deep science background, somebody who's a nutritionist now as well? What is your vision for the future and how do you think we can get there?
Ooh, I think the biggest obstacle is the lobbying and the marketing. That's where we're still stuck. And I think you just keep doing your part for where you are with the clients and just keep reaching out to more people. I think that's how we're gonna get there, just reaching out to more people. When people see, it's like a ripple effect. I see it as a ripple effect. This person's like, oh yeah, when I did this happened to me. I didn't have to be on drugs. I got off XYZ drugs at the end. And the next person's like, oh, I want to try that. So I see the ripple effect and the more people that get into it. And as you see um, more physicians going into functional integrative medicine. I have a friend who I connect with the physician, but I hear her talking. That's what she wants to do now. Like I was so excited. Like, you know, pediatrician, she wants to really get into the whole culinary thing. I was like, whoa, just by listening to my summits and just exposure that they're doing by themselves. And they're like, this is an area of interest, especially working with children and seeing what's happening with, young kids with diabetes. That is so sad. That is so sad and heartbreaking that these kids have this condition that's reversible. We know that that's reversible and there's enough data there, but they get to be on drugs and insulin and, you know, and limit their life.
Yeah.
So I think it's really having a ripple effect. Just doing in your group and then spreading out to just like I like what you're doing, and that whole program that you have with the 2 million, it's amazing. And I think that's where we get to just influence our niche and our area and just get it to grow bigger and bigger. And I love that with the summit too, you get people to see more health practitioners that are doing this, whether they're nutritionists, naturopathic doctors, MDs. You see them, they're like, well, I want to change. If these people are thinking this is what's going to work and I can reverse my condition, then there's something I want to know about. So I think all that additional exposure through the media, social media, or summits and all that is another way of, and podcasts, things like that. It's just how we spread that.
Yeah. And it does take that on the ground approach too, because like what you're doing, it's one thing to give people the information. Information does not create change. But
Right.
then when you can hold their hand, even if it's through Zoom, like you are holding their hand through Zoom to teach them how to shop for their vegetables, how to wash their foods, how to prepare their meals. And this is the part that really needs to happen because we are in a place that despite all the TikTok videos and all the, social media posts there are on creating healthy food, like most people are laying on their couch eating a bag of chips scrolling through Instagram. They're not out there taking notes on what they actually need to do. But once they get somebody who spends a few hours with them showing them how easy it can be, it's no longer that they're just liking the post, they're like actually standing up in their kitchen engaging in this behavior. So I love the work that you're doing because that desperately needs to be done to show people how to cook these foods. This is so,
Yes.
so important. And it's not hard.
No, it's not. It's not.
Don't need to be a chef.
Exactly. I was just here. I'm not a chef. I'm not a chef. I have many chefs in my family, and I make these foods that are tasty. And often, what I do when I invite my family to meals, I don't even tell them what's in it, because you say that they're like, I don't want to eat that. That's too healthy, and then it's gone before you go for the next serving. It's gone. It's like it's all gone. Do you know what that was? They're like, no. I was like, this is what it is. There's no meat in that. There's no,
Yeah.
this is all plant based. And like, really, that's so good. So just introducing people to, like you say, just getting them to take action.
Yeah, and I love that you brought that up too about not telling people what's in it because when I first became vegetarian and went plant-based, I like it was way, way, way back, like probably 20, more than 20 years ago actually. And it was that's when I didn't know the knowledge that I didn't have the knowledge that I had now. I didn't know you can reverse the diseases. Like I was doing it because planetary wise, it was definitely good for the planet to be plant-based. Health wise, I knew it was good, but I couldn't explain why. But that was also back when to be vegetarian meant that we were still making meat like dishes with the soy ground protein, because we still thought, well, you need to be replacing protein for protein. So we were getting all the substitute meats, and that's what we were putting in our food. My husband and I used to make amazing pasta sauces, and now we would never even dream of taking a single one of those meat substitutes. Like if we're going to make, and we don't even care about replacing the meat like texture or anything. Like we're so happy to eat a squash with asparagus and Brussels sprouts. Like that is delicious. But for while people are transitioning to that, what's so beautiful is that there's so many plant-based recipes now. Like you can make beautiful meatballs, which I made for the first time. I was like, I had a craving like from 20 years ago. I was like, I want meatballs. And I just found like an incredible recipe. It had mushrooms, it had nuts, it had oats, it had
Mm.
flaxseed made with water, it had beautiful herbs and spices, parsley, everything. And we made these meatballs. And even when I ate them, I was thought I tricked myself. I'm like, is this meat? So it's, for people who are still looking for that meat substitute, you don't need to be buying the fake meat that's out
Right.
there, like the Impossible Burgers or the Beyond Meat Burger, because that stuff is not food.
Oh, that's yes, impossible burgers. I don't want to talk about those. That's lab. It's sad.
Well,
It's sad, but
let's
that's
talk about that though. I think this is a really good piece to bring up. Like, tell me what your opinion is on the Impossible Burger and the Beyond Meat Burger.
honestly, it's disgusting. I'm sorry. I'm just being honest. I'm being honest. Like it's made in the lab. It's there's
Yeah.
nothing plant based about that, and I tried it one time because I didn't know what was in it. That was like maybe 4 years ago. I was like, this tastes horrible. Then I found out it was made in the lab. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's why it tastes horrible. And and you see people feeling good, like, okay, I'm gonna be plant based. I'm eating an Impossible Burger, but it's it's even better to eat your meat than to have an Impossible Burger
Yeah,
because
I agree.
yeah, that's if you have organic meat, it's way better than Impossible Burger. You
Yeah,
don't
from
want
a
to.
health standpoint, for
Yes,
sure. I know a
yeah.
lot of vegans think it's the best thing on the planet because you're not eating the animal, but you have to balance out the environmental impact with the health impact, with obviously, are you torturing animals?
Mhm.
And on the health perspective, it is horrific what it is doing to your body, this Impossible Burger. Would you agree?
Yes, I agree. It's impossible what it's doing to your body.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know how. And it's so sad that it's really taking off. Like, it's really, really taking off. And it's like a big thing in the plant-based community, and people feel good about trying that. And I see that you go online, you go to a restaurant. I just work somewhere and I read this a vegan restaurant and they have Impossible Burger. I'm like, oh,
I know.
that just yeah messed up your rating right there for me. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's sad that is still around, and I'm hoping that someday it will become exposed, just like the processed refined foods are. People that are really wanting to take back their health realize that processed refined food is not part of what they get to do to take
Yeah.
back your health, and so you don't get to eat um, Impossible Burger. There's another one. There's two Impossible, and there's
The
another
Beyond Meat Burger.
Beyond Meat. Beyond, see, it's Beyond Meat because there's nothing in there that's good for you.
Yeah.
It's beyond poor health. Yeah, I definitely and I think it started out with some of those processed vegan food like the tofuki or something like that. Those things, or yeah, it's not you don't find that in the produce aisle. If it's not
Yeah.
in the produce aisle, then you don't want to buy it.
Yeah, if you don't see it growing on a tree or a bush or in the ground, you don't wanna buy it, and,
Yes, exactly.
and those all the ingredients, but they do a great job of tricking people, right? 100% plant-based, 100% plant strong, and but I mean, it has things like vegetable glycerin in there, which is used in cleaning and cosmetic products, and it has, isolated soy protein, which means you're not getting soy, you're getting one protein that they're
Mm-hmm.
using, and it's only to give it that spongy texture to make it taste like cooked red
Mm,
meat. And so there's all of these, and it's so high in sodium, it's got tons of sugar in there, it's still like it's so highly processed, and there's no nutrients. So
yeah, it
anybody
should say
who's
100% lab made.
yes, exactly.
Then you know that at least you know what you're getting. It's lab made, 100%. Chemical
Yeah.
because that's what it is. I mean, it's yeah,
Yeah, and
but
you're still
that's
only getting it on the same white bun, so that's denatured. There's no nutrients. You're getting it with the iceberg lettuce. There's no nutrients. You're still getting it with the like pesticide produced tomatoes and onions, like
yes,
no nutrients.
yes,
So at the
yes,
end of the day, there's nothing in that meal that is serving you.
right. And then some people get it with cheese. I'm like, okay, I'm looking at it as like that's your vegan menu.
I know.
Yeah, it's definitely. it's going to take a long process to get over the lobbying and what's happening with the food industry and with the marketing, and especially, I want to say, especially in America.
Yeah. Well, in Canada as well, it's the same. And we see it in the rates of chronic disease, right? So, we're not going to see the chronic disease rates go down because the Impossible Burger and Beyond Meat Burger came out. Like, we're just going to see them continue to rise because people are
Mm-hmm.
still eating processed, refined food. Like you said at the very beginning of what you learned in your Institute for Integrative Nutrition program, it's about the processed, refined foods.
Yep, and sugars
Yeah.
and dairy and all those things, and then we know, at least it says, like corn and soy are the most foods, even though they're from the plant, they have so much GMO and glyphosate and all that in them that
Yeah.
corn and soy, depending on the quality, it's like really something you get to avoid. Except if you're looking like source organic and it's organic, but corn is
So
very widely eaten in everything.
yeah,
And of course, the same corn is used for plastic.
exactly. Yeah. It's yeah, corn right now, like the only corn that people should really be consuming is if it is to make your garbage pail that you're going to put your garbage inside. Like it not should not be used, or maybe for the compostable packaging or something like that. But right now our soy and our corn is so contaminated with
It is
pesticides,
contaminated.
which contributes to the chronic inflammation, which contributes to the joint pain, which contributes to the digestive issues. Like it's all connected.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe if you have your own garden, you make your own seeds. I don't know, but it is very contaminated, and
Yeah.
that's a big one, especially in the summer. That's
Mhm.
a big corn is a big summer food.
Oh, it's a huge summer food. I mean, is in the all over North America, and I mean all over the world. Corn, like maize in Africa. I mean, it's what people live off of. But they eat that. They crush it down to make like in Malawi, it's ensima. I'm sure in Nigeria there's a similar porridge that's made out of the maize. Is
Yeah,
there?
but it's actually grown differently. I remember years ago I tried corn back home. They actually get it freshly. It's one. It's not like processed right, and if it's not that day, it's bad corn. Like if it's not that day from like fresh, like right there, you get it from the garden and the farm. It's not. They look at it like, oh, this is bad. I'm like, really? I said, ours is like 20 days old or 20 weeks old. I don't know. We don't know where it came from, and it doesn't taste the same, and
No.
it's so different. It's so different. Like, but now it's so mass produced. It's like a big money making.
Yeah, it is a
Yeah.
money, and because they use the corn in as a filler for every single processed packaged food that is out there. The number two ingredients are wheat, well, three: wheat, yeast, and corn.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what makes cereal look like cereal, is that they're often using these corn, and that they're shaping it into these different, Cheerios and cornflakes, and but that's not real food, right?
Yeah,
But it's
yeah.
just a filler.
It's marketed as gluten free
Yeah, and it's the
because it's corn.
foundation. Exactly, and it's the foundation for ketchup is made out of corn. It's the
Mm,
foundation for like almost absolutely everything. So yeah, people are out
ketchup.
there. Yeah, yeah, it's so important that you learn how to make your own ketchup, that you make, and if you're eating corn, like you said, please grow it in your garden, and it grows really easily. Like if you plant squash, corns, and beans together, it's called the Three
Mm,
Sisters, and you
mm.
grow this together, and Mother Nature has made it so when they're growing next to each other, they're all feeding each other in the growing process, and they're producing the most amount of nutrients in these three foods. And this is good eating. Like this is good living.
They're like triplets.
Exactly. Yeah. Like triplets, exactly. The corn, the beans, and the squash.
Yeah, yeah. And I love beans. I love beans. Like my sister makes this great beans. She just boils it. She just boils it and puts some onions
Mm.
and chop up some peppers, like red pepper, and that's it. It's like in this pressure cooker, so it's nice and soft, and you just add it to your food.
Oh, that sounds
Very tasty.
delicious. That's what I want to go eat right now. Mm.
Mhm.
So, Moriam, how do people get in touch with you and how do they sign up for your cooking classes and how do they sign up to work with you for 3 to 6 months so that they can reverse their chronic diseases, help them get off medicine? How do people get in touch with you?
So my website, www.livebeyondwellness.com. There'll be a link to sign up for to get my um, newsletter, and from there, also I'll include a link to book a strategy call with me.
Perfect.
From that, and then that's how you get to work with me, and then we can go from there. I They're cooking classes, but I incorporate my cooking classes as part of my coaching program because I believe like you get to have that support. Just cooking the food by yourself and not knowing the next step, that support of when you, like say, when you get doubts and and you're feeling like, oh, I want to go back and eat this, and just really supporting it. I believe it's more than just food. Like say, food is medicine, but it affects the mind. People have these mood things with based on what's been going on with them for years.
Yeah.
So I support them with just mood and movement. It's just like, how do you feel good? How are you positive about this change that you're making when you're feeling those days when you're feeling like, I don't know if I want to do it.
Yeah.
So and that's and teaching them how to. So just connecting through the website and signing up for the newsletter and also booking a strategy call with me.
Amazing. And for those that don't want to jump in just yet, you can go to Moriam's site, Live Beyond Wellness, and you can still purchase the summit package. Is that not correct? With all the speakers that you had talking about gut health and chronic inflammation and digestive, how to overcome digestive issues and all the other chronic illnesses. So they can purchase that on your website as well.
Yeah, that's a big one. You have 22 speakers.
Amazing.
That was really and yeah, you get to hear about Nicolette. It's just amazing. I mean, everybody just it was so powerful what everybody said about gut health, and you could hear the common theme, about what your body needs. You know,
Yeah, real food, real
yeah,
food. Yeah,
real
so
food.
I really recommend your summit as well for people just to start learning because then when you start to see these 22 speakers come together and basically they're all saying the same thing and you'll see this across most of the health books that are coming out now that are about reversing disease, that it is about real food. You don't often see a lot of, use keto to reverse your disease. You see use keto to reverse to lose weight. And yeah, keto will help you lose weight, but
Mm-hmm.
you will not see books written about how keto is there to reverse your disease. And I don't think we'll ever see it because what we're seeing is that people who are on these high animal fat diets, these high fat processed diets, where they're not using real foods, real carbohydrates, that they're also still like their chronic illnesses get worse after the first year of being on these diets. So people really need to be careful about that.
Yeah, you see a lot of data and studies about reversing disease with plant-based diet. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot, like you say, from Dr. Bernard, Dr. Foreman, your data, the Gerson therapy, and just so many and so much. And you have documentation. So I just definitely am a big advocate of going plant-based because I've seen the results in
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
in
In
what
yourself
it
as
does.
well. In
Yes,
yourself. You were the
yes.
first person, right? To do
Yes,
that and
I've
get
seen
those.
the result in myself. Absolutely, absolutely. That was a big one for me. And actually, doing that supported me also getting off. I used to have a lot of allergies, but I took a lot of inhalers. The steroid-based one or the what they call sympathomimetics, the beta. Um, Not the beta blockers, but the sympathomime that affect and it will increase your heart rate, the decongestant, all that stuff. I mean, I was on like 3 or 4 sprays and I took a decongestant and I took this, antihistamine. And what it does is make you sluggish, tired, and my heart rate was like always pumping. And with just changing what I ate, I got off all of those, honestly. That's for me, it supported me to not require those.
That is amazing. Yeah. And often what I see is the same thing too, is that people who are suffering from a lot of these asthma, lung conditions, which often then, a lot of people have skin conditions to follow, is just showing that our organs are not doing well. They don't have enough of what they need. They're not able to detoxify properly. So then your skin ends up in outbreaks, your lung ends up with, the symptoms of asthma. You have all these allergies that, and they're not real allergies. It's food intolerances because your body's not strong enough to process these like real nutrients. But the minute you turn to whole foods, your body heals quickly. And then you'll see all of these drugs that you're taking, you no longer need them. It happens fast.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. It does. And you also see just from the gut summit, you see the connection with the gut and the brain and how your moods are affected by this. People feeling anxious and, all that stuff. It's also connected to the gut. Like, guys, you said it, when in doubt, heal the gut and go from there, and things begin to just get better.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that out because we are in an epidemic of chronic disease. And within that, the mental health diseases are so huge: panic attacks, anxiety, depression. And simply by healing the gut with real food, people will see their mood entirely shift. And so that's a really important piece that, if for any reason, do that, because once you start feeling better, then you can make way better decisions for yourself in all areas of your life, not just your kitchen. So,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
glad that you brought that up.
Part of my client work is now adding nutrigenomics testing.
Oh, that's
I'm
awesome.
getting certified in that. I was just thinking about that. I was like, yeah, I'm getting, and it came up from my last summit. I got connected to one of my speakers that connected me to this group. So once I get that, I have the kit and everything, and I can do that for my clients to see really
That's
what food
awesome.
sensitivities they have. Because people sometimes that are skeptical, that supports them to say, okay, you might end up with this problem if you don't
Get
make
enough
changes.
B6 from the greens. And exactly. Yeah, no, the nutrigenomics testing that I did at that, and I did DNA Power. And it was fantastic because I like both of them were so great because the reports that they produce are phenomenal. And at the end of the day, I think like if we went and had 2,000 people tested, it would come back and tell people eat more dark leafy greens, eat more real whole foods.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it makes our job easier.
Yeah, for the people who need that evidence rather than their body, like your body is telling you, but you're not believing it, or you feel there's some other way. But when you see it on paper, it's like, especially for the analytical mind,
Yeah.
where they want that proof, and that's going to support them. So
Yeah, no, that is really, really good proof. I'm glad that that you're doing it. Where are you doing the training?
DNA Life,
Okay,
the
that's
group called
great.
DNA Life, they're based. It's like this Nordic labs. I think they're based somewhere in Europe. The main office is in Europe, but they have a US site. So they send you,
Great.
and then you get to do testing, 10 kits, and then you go through this 18 modules, and then you take the certification. So I'm really excited about it.
Oh, that's so great. That's awesome. And then you just have the kits on hand and you can just give them to your clients so they can do
Yeah,
the swab, yeah, and send it off to the lab.
right.
Yeah. That's awesome. Because you don't have to, like, you're going to send it off to a lab and then the lab will send you the report back and then you share the information.
Well, I think the when I'm going to include it in my package, but once it's paid for, they will ship it to the client
Oh,
directly,
good.
and then they do the stick and then send it back.
Awesome. Yeah,
So
that's
then
so
the
good.
result then goes into my site, so that
Great.
and then they provide assistance too if you need assistance with interpretation.
Yeah.
But yeah, but
Yeah.
I like that because it's going to support more people. Like, okay, I want to know more what's going on with me.
Exactly.
Maybe when they see that diagnostic, they can take it to their doctor.
Yeah.
Doc, this is what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't challenge that, right? You have it in black and white. You have the nutrigenomics, and
Yeah.
yeah, that's a good one. I think it'll support people to move forward with making
That's
changes.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I love that you're doing that. That's awesome. Moriam, it has been such a pleasure connecting with you here on the Eat Real to Heal podcast. I want to thank you so much for sharing your expertise, your knowledge, your stories, because you are doing such great work in the world. So thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Nicolette. It's really good to be here. And I've enjoyed interviewing you in the past as well. So we have this connection. So that's
Oh, yeah.
wonderful.
you and I are going to be working together for life, doing this good work and supporting each other, and so that we can continue to support others in doing this work. So
Yeah.
thanks for being a partner in crime in this beautiful plant-based space.
Thank you. I'm enjoying it.
There we go, everyone. Wonderful, folks. And here we are at the end of the show, and do what you do best. And that is forward this podcast. If it inspired you, forward it to someone you love so they can learn a little bit more information that might help motivate them to make the changes that they need to make right now, where they can start eating better, eating healthier, learning about what real healthy eating and cooking is like. Also, if there's any other shows that you've seen in our whole entire episode lineup, we have now done, this is our 103rd episode. And so this podcast has been going for a couple years now, and we would love for you to go right back to the beginning. We have such incredible podcasts lined up for you here. So take the time to listen to them, whether you digest them in 15-minute increments or for the full 1.5 to 2 hours, you can still take in this information. And then more importantly, go out there and apply what you learn so you can actually see the changes in your life starting today. Start going out there and making those transformations. And last but not least, we are launching 22 Million Strong training program for 2023, the tour across Canada, where I'll be running and biking across Canada, working with Indigenous communities, BIPOC communities, to really have beautiful heart-to-heart discussions around what are the barriers to accessing clean, real food. We have so many, it's incredible, food deserts. That means places where communities don't have access to food. And these places exist all over Canada, all over North America, over many parts of the world. And these are in developed countries. This should not be happening. Imagine saving that $3.6 trillion a year, not having to spend it on preventable and reversible diseases, but instead being able to apply that money into growing food so we no longer have food deserts in our nations. So you want to head over to Facebook, enter in 22 Million Strong, and join our group so you get access to my full training program, nutrition program, the community group where we're going to start training together starting very soon. So head over there now, like us, love us, join us so we can all get healthy together. Okay, everyone, have an amazing day. See you next week on the Eat Real to Heal show. Bye for now.